Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor here. I'm going to shoot out another bolo for you today. I got several emails from different actual subscribers, all relating to the same thing. Now, we've touched on charms in other videos here in the past, but we're going to actually center in on some charms actually today, more character related here, because they do show up all the time. They're very, very cheap items. They're very tiny, they're small, and they make great profits. So let's cut over to the screen right now, and we're going to talk about charms. So here we are with our first charm. Now, most of these are character related. These would have been something you could have sent away for or bought locally at many establishments. Some were given away. Some were for actually being members of some radio fan clubs or clubs in general. They all sell for some good money. We're going to again show you character related ones. Now this first one here is Doc Savage. You should know Doc Savage if you're into collectibles at all. Comic books are related to Doc Savage, actual pulp magazines, pulp books, actual hardcover books. There's comics in the Sunday pages as well, and many premium items as well. It was a radio show also. This is $2,300, and this is either a aluminized piece of plastic or it's just basically a cheap piece of metal. Now this is a typical type. You'd see it small. You can see the actual fingers of an adult person holding this, just to give you an idea. Most every item I'm going to show you here I can get for pennies on most of the time, because they show up in little bags of just junk all over the place. State sales, garage sales, flea markets, antique malls especially, auctions as well. Local live auctions do very well in these too, so they're usually cheap. I found things like this at Savers, sometimes in the case, sometimes in bulk bags hanging from the wall, sometimes Salvation Army. Again, it doesn't have to be this type from Doc Savage. There's tens of thousands of different types of premiums and charms of various types and sundries, so got to look out for them, though. They're small. Most people miss these. Most people don't mess with these. Most people don't think they're worth much at all. This first one here should show you right off the bat that there's major money involved in these types of items. Here's just a couple of campaign charms. This is Blaine. He ran for president, and a Harding one. These are typical. Now, the Blaine one's actually missing the actual clip. They made these for a long time. They just changed the character. It's basically the same mechanism. It actually moves. Any mechanical charm usually goes for good money. Now, I personally would have sold these separately. Might have gotten more money out of them actually that way, especially with the Blaine one here. So, $261. Alfred E. Newman. What Me Worry. Now, most of these charms, there could be some gold versions of these, or ones that look very similar. Disney made a ton and still makes a ton of 10 karat, 12 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat gold charms of various types. Some could be worn where the actual markings are worn off, and others may just not have been marked at some point, or were too small to mark. Now, most everything we're showing you are little tiny pieces of metal, plastic, or wood, or something along that line. They all sell for decent money if you get the right one. This is an original. It's fairly scarce. It doesn't show up very often. $227. Here's another one. Anything usually marked with HK for Hong Kong does fairly well, just because a lot of them didn't have space to actually mark it. Now it would be marked on the base or on the back. Now you can also see the typical size on this one here. Anything that's movable or has pieces or parts to it is usually worth more. This is a pretty hefty item for something this small and for plastic. Again, I buy these in bulk. Sometimes I can buy a ton of little tiny charms or plastic pieces or pins. Sometimes these types of items show up with jewelry lots as well too. So even at Savers, as I said. So anyway. Now here is Flumps Up. Now I'm not sure where the whole origin of this came from. Now these types of items have a wood head usually and a silver or a silverish actual body. Some say Flumps Up in it, some don't. It's a British thing if I'm not mistaken. It was worn by soldiers like a good luck charm. Many different versions of this too. They don't all look like this. Next one here is a vintage miniature metal bottle of Dr. Pepper. Any of these soda metal ones go for some good money. Most what people see are the little tiny plastic charms that you can turn into earrings or not. People will buy these and turn these into modern day earrings. Collectors will make bracelets out of them. They'll save up a whole bunch and buy all just Dr. Pepper and have a Dr. Pepper bracelet. That's what people do. They collect these as well too. Most of the miniature soda bottles that are made out of metal go for good money. Now, I could have shown you a ton of the plastic ones. That's not the ones you want. You want the metal ones. The plastic ones do sell, don't get me wrong, but these are the much better choice to find. Now here's a Pepsi one. Now some of these were given away at events. This one's for the actual Miss America contest, Atlantic City. Now there's another one too that's just a plain Pepsi-Cola metal charm that doesn't say Miss America. It's basically the exact same bottle without the impression in it. That still goes for about the same amount of money. These are from the 60s. They're not super old either. $103 on this one. Next one here is a modern day one. This one actually lights up. Now, some people can call these keychains or other things. It's basically a charm of sorts because of the small size. So, $102 on this one also. Next one here. Now, this is a cigar cutter / charm. These could have been bought. They could have been given away as a promo. There could have been some printing on it that's worn off. $150. Cigar cutters are a whole nother bolo all on themselves. I do have a cigar video coming up soon that will touch on some of those items also. The next one here is a vintage Frankenstein one. Now in this one here, they marked out the small one, which is the standard charm, and the large one is actually a charm / pencil topper. It has a hole to mount on the top of a pencil. It's a perfect example of a pencil topper. Now there's a whole series of these, and I'm going to show you some of those as well. Any of these horror monster ones go for some good money. You know, you're going to find them. They're really small. The small ones like this big, the large ones about that big, about an inch and a quarter at the most tall, up to the loop top. So again, these are things that most people miss, and I do mean most people. They'll just be in a little tiny bag sometimes with 10 or 15 different charms in them, or with a bunch of other junk. Sometimes I find them in with buttons. I could probably find charms almost every day if I really wanted to dig for them. There's a ton of places to find these. So anyway, these are good items across the board. Let's pop on to the next one here. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, $100. Now these are from the 40s. You can find them in many sources. Again, bulk lots is where I find a lot of these, or estate sales. Now, here are some monster ones here. Now, somebody should have actually split these up, in my opinion. You've got the Wolfman, the Skull. There's Frankenstein again. There's a White Devil figure. Just a real good assortment of these actual here on this one. Yeah, it's a real nice assortment, in all honesty. This would have been something I would have split up. Bracelets don't mean a lot because you can come up with bracelets any day of the week, in my personal opinion. You've got the Mummy on here. The Skull and Crossbones sells very well. Again, I would have split this up. King Kong's on there also. So, very good lot. They could have probably doubled their money had they split this one up. Now, it doesn't have to be old, as I said. This is a Pokemon. You know, they make new ones of charms. And we're going to show you some new ones here as well. This is something you can RA, believe it or not. I sell charms on Amazon. I sell them on Etsy as well. These are things you can sell across the spectrum on different sites. Don't lock yourself in just to eBay. Don't lock yourself in just to selling vintage items, because again, you can find these new. Good sources are Walmart, toy stores, toy fairs, garage sales, believe it or not. Especially ones that have young teen items. Now, if a garage sale says teen clothing, you're going to find stuff like this there possibly too. This is Goofy Gifts. It's Grandmother Stovers. Grandmother Stovers made a ton of these kind of items, marketed just like this. $88 on this one. $100 on this one because they're metallic, they're chrome, various different items. And those were both made by the same manufacturer. Now we're back to another one here that you could RA. This is something you can RA. This is something you can find. They sold 4 of these for $87. They've got 2 left. Hundreds of dollars can be made in these tiny little things. This is Sailor Moon. These are new. They've been making Sailor Moon charms for 20 plus years. Now here's a Stanhope. Now I've talked about Stanhope before. A Stanhope charm is always something good to find. Most people are going to miss a Stanhope charm. I can tell you right now, and I'll tell you why. Because there's only a little tiny opening that would even indicate this is a Stanhope. You got to look in this pig's mouth, and in the mouth is a risque image. Real tiny. It's a microscopic image, and if you don't look at it just right in that tiny little hole, you're going to miss it. Now, I've showed actual Stanhope items. I've showed some from the 1900 World's Fair that were actually in the shape of binoculars. I've showed some other figures. I had a crucifix with the actual positions of the cross that were Stanhope. So this is something you're going to find. Almost every Stanhope piece that you find, charm or not, is worth at least $50 to $100 right off the bat. No matter what, every one of them. So if you see an animal or a vintage item or a charm that's really small, that has some oddball holes in it, hold it up to the light. You may get lucky and find one that has microscopic images in it. So anyway, this is a real good item, 85 bucks. More new items, Psycho Pass, $83 on these. They can be the same, they can be different, whatever the case may be, these all sell. They do show up here. Don't think you're not going to find these items over here. Not like 20 years ago when everybody called them nerds and geeks, when people like us watched and liked sci-fi and comics and stuff like that. It's mainstream now. So this stuff is all over the place. So break the habit of thinking that this stuff just isn't over here. I find these new items all the time. Closeout stores. You can find these at like Walgreens even, believe it or not. Just hanging from little racks. They may be a couple dollar little cheapo things that you could flip. Pokemon items I found recently at Walgreens. So, now these are Belle clip charms, they're called. They got little clips on them. Now I'm not sure the name on the little clip, but they all have little bells. They jingle. Some of these are missing the bells, which isn't odd. The bells sometimes get lost. People will take the bells off and then reattach them because they don't want to hear the jingle. These were sold in the 80s. The 80s, mind you. $81 for this lot. You can sell some of these individually, and they'll still sell in the $10 or $15 range as well. Now, here's a Heinz soup can. Most of the food-related mini charms go for some good money. There's even little miniature pickles. All these little charms go for some good money. And I'll show you a few more, too. They were promotional items given away at fairs and festivals. You could send away for them. All kinds of ways you could get these back in the day. Now this one's a bad image here, unfortunately, but this is Jackie Robinson and a couple other ones. These are little charms. Some of these were available through Topps Chewing Gum, actually, the actual baseball card company also. This one went for 80 bucks. Now here's a vintage capsule. Again, HK, Hong Kong, 1960s. Perfect example. You can see a quarter in the image to give you the size on this. These are good items across the board. 90 bucks on this one. Now we're going back to the World's Fair from 1904. Technically, I think started in 1903, but this is a charm from there with a mirror on the back. 80 bucks. It's enamel. It's a very nice enamel work on this one here, too. So they have them for every kind of event you could imagine. So just another perfect example. Now, Bradford Exchange made them as well, too. Bradford Exchange, if you're not familiar with the name, they made plates. They make plates are the majority of what you see. They make a lot of other things. They make model cars and things. They're usually more expensive items. It's a club, usually. You have to pay like a monthly fee for a lot of the Bradford items. They do turn around and resell. Now, they're not going to sell for anywhere near what you paid for them, so it's basically kind of like a home shopping network kind of thing. You overpay for them, and at the end of the day, they sell in bulk for pretty cheap, in all honesty. Some go for good money, though. There are some that are highly collectible. Not to ding on Bradford Exchange, because we have sold some Bradford Exchange items for some massive amounts of money. Plates even, but for the most part, they don't sell for a ton. This is a pretty good assortment of actual Disney items here, so somebody spent some time collecting these. $76. Next one here is another one of the actual soldier charms here. So again, it may not say anything on it. It's wood head with metal arms and stuff. It's a typical example. These usually sell in the World War I section under personal items. That's where you're going to get the most money for these. $108 on this one. Now this charm here is the BPOE. It's the Elks. It's a fraternal organization. One thing to think about on stuff like this, that's usually a real tooth on some of them, and they're usually gold. Now, there's cheaper versions with plastic teeth and just gold filled, which is what this one is here. So, a lot of these charms can come in gold and silver versions. I test anything out that I'm not sure of. I've got a specific place I go to. I've went into the whole aspect on reselling gold and silver. I'm going to touch on that in another video here, too, because we resell and do scrap gold and silver constantly. I've got bags that we save, and then we'll build up to a couple ounces of gold or a couple pounds of silver, and then we'll go and turn it in as well too. But I'll touch on that in another video. This one here being faux bone and gold filled, $76, but some of the real versions of this can go for hundreds. Now here's some more food items. Now on something like this, this person would have done better to say put each individual item up and sell them separately. The Pepsi Cola charm on there itself can go for 40 or 50 bucks on the right day. So I would have separated these. The Mobile Oil one would have probably went for 30 or 40 on its own. The Duds, probably about the same thing. The Old Dutch, all of these could have been something that could have sold separately. I will bust these up and sell them as individual charms almost always on something like this. Maybe not like the Bradford Exchange one, but this one for sure. Now here is the RMS Carmania. And I believe this is a White Star line along the same lines of like the Lusitania or the Titanic. So all of these items are good, and I've showed many items like this. I've had a Mauritania one from a similar piece, just like this actually, not too long ago that I did show. Went for even more than this. So most of the transportation ones go for at least 50 to say a couple $100 if you get the right ship. Now, one of my favorites is Rat Fink. I remember Rat Fink, it was still around in the 70s. Perfect example of some of the charms. They came in many different colors. Now, in some cases, a specific color can be worth 2 or 3 times what a standard one would go for, just because they don't show up all the time. Some colors were harder to get, usually pink. So on this one here, this lot may have just sold for more money because of the pink one in here, too. These are plastic. They made Rat Fink that were actually metal as well, too. And here's just a metal version of the exact same thing, but in metal. $155. The metal versions are almost always worth more than the rest. So just something to think about. Ed Big Daddy Roth. Ed Roth is who created this. It's like Hot Rodders, Rat Rodders. If you don't know what Rat Rodder is, type in Rat Rodder and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So one more item here to show you along the same lines. These are my favorites out of these, in all honesty. Some of the early TV show ones are still cool as well, too, but I remember these as a child. So these came out in the end of the 1960s and through the 70s. When I was a child, you could still find some of these. Martian Fink. This is like a takeoff on Rat Fink. This is just Martian Fink. And it's a various mix of many different colors. So the Moon Goon. I remember these. There were shirts out for these. There were some patches and stuff as well, too. But that's what I have for you today. Well, there you go. There's another item that I look for. Hopefully that gave you some ideas and some thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.